Hello and welcome to this edition of Buddy Talk. My name is Sandeep and I am your thoughtful buddy hosting these talks. As part of the Buddy Talk series, I plan to call upon some of my buddies to share their experiences and knowledge in different topics related to product management, leadership, or any specific industry best practices around agile development, Scrum methodology, and things like that. The main motto, of course, is to learn from each other and have fun together. In each of these sessions, we will have one topic being presented and will be followed by a little bit of discussions, question and answers as such. And I will have these sessions recorded and published for public access. I'll share the details on my event page on LinkedIn as well. Following the principle of keeping it short and simple, I am trying to keep these sessions for either 30 minutes or so, and if time requires in future, we will probably extend it as well. For now, let me introduce this episode of Buddy Talk. Pricing, as we know, is probably the most important factor for business to grow, for any product to succeed, and yet it is very often given a very less attention or least attention, to be honest. In this session, we hope to understand why pricing is so important and what are some of the strategies and tactics that will ensure growth and profitability for the businesses. And we'll, of course, do all these things with the context of a SaaS product. Well, such an important topic. So how about having two people rather than one to talk about this? And that's why two of my buddies, Ishaan and Dilip, are here to talk about what goes behind pricing of SaaS products. Hi, Ishaan. Hi, Dilip.
Hey, Sandeep.
Hey, Sandeep.
Hi. Okay, Ishaan is a senior product manager at Microsoft, and his experience managing products that generate several hundred millions dollars in revenue. Two key lessons that he has learned are through customer research is the driver for success of your product, and pricing is a driver for success of the business, though. Well, Dilip, on the other hand, is a serial entrepreneur, consultant who has worked closely with several businesses and has a first-hand experience of what it takes to run a successful business. So sit back, participate, and explore the topic for today. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, do post them in the chat window of the Zoom. And now let me make way for Ishaan and Dilip to take us through the process of being profitable.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Sandeep. And great to be here and presenting as part of Buddy Talks. Sandeep, like you said, today we're going to be talking about a very important topic. And dare I say, one of the most important topics for us to get right, be it as product managers, as business owners, which is, really pricing. I hope my screen continues to stay visible. Why should we even think of pricing, right? Like, what does pricing really have to do anything? Pricing, from what I've seen in my experience, talking to a lot of people, talking to people who are smarter than me, who had more experience, one of the things I've noticed is pricing is one of the most important factors that dictates the success of your product. In fact, it's not just success, but survivability as well in a lot of cases. Like, can your product or your business survive? Everything revolves around price. Like, are you going to meet your revenue targets? Are you going to meet your profit targets? Are customers going to find your product appealing at that price range? Everything revolves around pricing. Just to see how pricing really is very effective and something to keep in mind, there's this very simple study that was done, keeping in mind around 3,500 SaaS products. And what was seen was the regularity with which pricing changes or pricing updates were done, not necessarily increasing the price, but, modifying some metric around pricing. What was noticed is companies which made no change in 3 years, they probably had average of around 5% growth. Those that made a change every 6 months, which is in the, you know, third to upline, they had a 60% growth in their revenue or average revenue per user, which is what this graph depicts. But those who made a pricing update or looked at their pricing and made sure that it stays current for the customer demand and the market segment they're serving, they had ARPU increase of nearly 110% in 3 years. And this really drives home the point about how important it is to really think about pricing. And another very interesting study was among the different revenue enhancing initiatives we can do, be it from having additional sales force, introducing new product features, making our product better, having better marketing campaigns. The number one most effective initiative has been improving your pricing improvement or pricing optimization. So having that lens on pricing is so very important, and especially important today in the world of SaaS. But routinely we've seen it's the most under optimized lever in SaaS. And nowadays we do have companies which probably look at it every maybe 6 months, but there is one main thing that's seen as, hey, can we increase the price, lower the price? What do we have to do around price? But pricing really has so many dimensions and aspects to it, some of it which we'll be covering in the session. On an average, early stage SaaS companies spend only 6 hours on their pricing strategy. And as we saw earlier, among all the things that you can do, even making your product better, the best thing that you can do is really make sure you have the most optimized, most current pricing for your product. So again, why even think of pricing then? Something that we already covered, revenue and profitability, but it's also lever for driving your sales promotion. So if you have B2B SaaS products, especially, price plays such an important part of any sales discussion. It depicts the brand of your product in the customer's eyes. So if you have a product which is supposed to be a high-end product, you price it maybe in a mid-tier segment for your product ranges, then the brand positioning will again take a hit or be different. It's a flexible metric for fine-tuning marketing activities. It's something that you can play around easily with, and some of it we'll go through in the last section, which is basically you can have some sort of discounts or some sort of promotions or some sort of trial for your customers, which really plays around this pricing value itself that different customers will be bearing. It's an easy way to compare products, and overall brand impact for your product company has a significant impact through pricing. Now, what does price actually mean, right? Like, there are so many different dimensions to it. And based on the kind of product, based on the kind of industry you are in, you have different. All of us think of price as that $1 value that we tell our customers, which you can think of as a base price, right? But on top of that, there are different dimensions that we as product managers or business owners can think of, be it from discounts, rebates, special offers that we can give, to differentiated packages based on different market segments or different product variants. Pricing for complementary products. Can you actually sell your product at a lower cost, but sell a lot of, complementary products as well, part of that. Or you can bundle up additional services or additional products and make it a more appealing pricing as well. Prices based on personal negotiation. So it's something which really happens a lot in the space of B2B SaaS products. And you have different types of pricing as well, like wholesale, retail, manufacturer. Maybe not so much in the space of SaaS, but something to think of when you think of wholesale, retail, manufacturer. A different way of thinking of it is you have your distributors, you have your partners, and you probably have customers who purchasing it directly from you. So you have different channels through which customers can purchase. That again pricing really has to play a different component in each of these thinking. Um, and it has many aliases. We normal goods have something called as a price. Insurance companies call it premium. Lawyers call it, fees of some sort, tuitions, and you have surcharges, fees, you have tolls. Basically, everything that is there in the world, there is a price being quoted to it. You work in an organization. The company calls it compensation, but in the end, they are paying a particular price for your services. Similarly, when you as a product manager or a business owner thinking about a product, this aspect about how you actually are going to call the price that a customer is going to pay, it's something very interesting, which plays a very important psychological effect. For example, banks call it, schedule of charges or commissions called by brokers. Different terminologies have different psychological impact. And, that is something very important to keep in mind. But overall, what really is price? For me, price equals to value. It is the value that our customers get for which they're ready to pay a particular premium or a particular price for it. I would really think of it as an exchange of value, a value that we give for which we take in a particular price. So price, the most important concept, if among this entire 30-40 minutes of this session, the one thing that you can think of is, or remember, which will make the biggest difference, is understanding that, hey, what is our value metric? A value metric based on which you design your pricing strategy, you design your pricing tactics. That is the most important thing to keep in mind. If you can come up with a value metric which can clearly define what it means for your customers when they use your product, what is the value that they get out of it, which would be the best way for them to have that transactional value with you. That is one of the most important things to keep in mind. Now, value metric can really differ. I've put up two companies over here. Both are offering similar products. And the product is, when you go to a banking website, on your right-hand bottom corner, you get a chat window, which lets you chat and get some sort of, automated support. So Intercom does that. And their value metric is basically the number of people who are engaging with that particular bot. So if 1,000 customers of HDFC Bank use that bot, then Intercom charges based on the number of people who've used that service. Their rival, which is Drift, and Drift really caters to the sales folks, and sales folks are used to, number of seats, meaning the number of people who use a particular product. So it goes on the licensing per person. So you have 10 salespeople in the organization, the cost is going to be per salesperson. Whereas the previous one, Intercom, was a mix of, they cater to a wide variety of segments, be it from customer support companies to sales companies to marketing companies. So they need to have a more universally appealing metric compared to, Drift, which is more sales oriented. So the thing is, there is no one size fits all value metric, but one of the most important things to think of is, hey, who is the customer segment that I'm trying to target, and what is the value that I'm trying to provide to that customer segment? You have multiple customer segments. What is that one unique value that all of them identify with, which will be a scalable way for me to build and derive value from my customers? That is, a very key thing to think of when you think of value metric. Now, there are basically three components when it comes to pricing. The first is having the right pricing strategy, which is the overarching framework that you need to use. Then comes the pricing tactics. So how exactly are you going to go about implementing your strategy? That's what tactics refers to. And then the third aspect is, the psychological piece of it. What should you think of, and how best to make your price attractive to a consumer? That is, and it's a very important aspect about pricing, something which really delves into how a user that initial gut reaction when you see a particular price when you're trying to make a purchase. It's similar for anyone, be it B2B folks who are going to be your buyer persona. It's a similar thing. So let's move on to pricing strategies. The first is flat rate pricing. Now, this is the simplest format that there is, right? So you have a fixed amount. It's easy to sell. It's easy to communicate. The thing is, it probably almost never works anywhere because your product cannot mean the same thing to everyone. And there is no way for you to be able to differentiate the value that your product is giving for different people. And what it means is, for a customer, you either are overselling or underselling. And for you, what it means is you're leaving a lot of dollars on the table. So something which is used a lot more, of course, these days is usage-based pricing. Now, this caters to a wide variety of users, right? You can probably have users who use your product very little to the heavy users, and based on how much they use, your pricing can really vary. What something that it probably does not do perfectly is, say your low-end users who don't use your product so much, they obviously will not be using your entire feature ranges, right? But a heavy user will probably be using that. There is no way for you to differentiate that additional value you'll probably be giving to some of the heavy users through a usage-based pricing model. But of course, this is very common, and it forms a key component of all SaaS pricing. That too, when you look at it from a cloud world, especially anything from a consumption perspective, there is some element of usage-based pricing baked into the overall pricing strategy. Then, of course, is the tiered-based pricing. We've all seen, a diagram which is similar to this. Now, this again is very relevant to a different wide set of users. You have a clear upselling route, which is really cool because your features can also get differentiated based on the different tiers you have. Now, one of the cons is it brings a lot of aspects for a product manager to really think through. So you can end up over baking your pricing model, or it can also end up getting confusing for your customers. So something, when you're doing a tiered based pricing, something really important to always do is do a lot of experimentation around it. Then you have the per user pricing. This is, of course, it's a different nuance to tiered pricing, but it's basically the usage based pricing now converted to a per user pricing. So initially, your usage-based pricing can be, say, I'm going to use 100 hours of that particular software compared to 1,000 hours. But per user, of course, like it says, it's for the number of users who will be using it. And again, you can segment your features as well if you require into the per user pricing, meaning the standard probably gets fewer set of features, plus gets more, and so on and so forth. This is per active user pricing is something that I like even more, because what it does is it lets our customers know that we will be charging only for what they'll be using. With a per user pricing, it's really good if you have a huge enterprise customer. But what it really creates a challenge with is adoption. So, your customer can probably purchase 1,000 licenses, but maybe not really be using more than 100. Now, it is up to you as the company to really make sure that they use it, or they may end up, not renewing the contract. But with a per active user pricing, your customers know exactly what they're paying for, which is an active user who's using some part of the functionality. And it's really fair when you look at it for your customers. Now, a major con is if you have a SMB customer base, this is not very useful, because what this would do is, I mean, it's still useful, but it can expose your product to be overutilized, especially if you have a freemium version of it, like what is described in this screen. Then we have the per feature pricing. The per feature pricing is, the tiers that you have are purely based on the features that each tier is going to be having. Now they can be overlap, they may not be overlap, based on the features that are there in each tier, as a customer upgrades. But per feature pricing is again something which helps customers to, or which creates an avenue for you to upsell. It will really very well compensate for delivery heavy features. So if your product, you're creating certain features which take up, have a huge upsell value, have probably had a lot of engineering cycles going to creating it, so the cost for your product is pretty high, then a per feature pricing model really makes a lot of sense over there. Freemium model is, of course, something that we all know, where, something like what Dropbox does, you can get a high adoption. So really good in the early stages where you need to get that high adoption. But as you scale, it can be like a revenue killer. And unless it's done appropriately, you may end up not getting a lot of your users getting converted to a paid version of your product. And then, the pricing strategy, before we move on to pricing tactics with Dilip, the pricing strategy should ideally try to create a low barrier of entry for users, and, to try and experiment your product and your platform. But it should not leave so many dollars that you cannot run your business. So it is that, that synergy between both of them that has to be maintained, and that's one of the key components or key thought process that we need to keep in mind while designing the pricing strategy. With that, we'll move on to pricing tactics with Dilip.
Yeah, thank you, Ishaan. Let's see some of the pricing strategies or the pricing tactics. I think with any business, pricing plays a vital role. So as per the Forbes, 1% of improvement in monetization strategy optimization can refuel revenue growth by more than equivalent to optimization of customer acquisition and retention combined together. So I think with that, we know how important are these tactics. Let's see some of the tactics. Let's start with penetration pricing. So as the name suggests that it's purely, or maybe it can be used for the existing products, but if you want to launch a product and then grab the market initially rigorously, and with the market share that you want to achieve in a very short period, that is where the company offers the products for a low prices during short term and medium term terms. So this is something that this is like very easy to achieve, but there are downfalls for this as well, because of the market that you get with a half price rather than paying the full price, and then later on when you want to scale it up, it's something that you need to really look into it. Let's go see another strategy, another tactic. Ishaan, can you? Yeah. So what is captive pricing? As you all know, that captive is something that, you go, being a captive is like, for example, let's say that you are going to a theater or a PVR where you get to buy some products like coffee or popcorn or anything that doesn't have literally any competition. So that means that you have a product that doesn't have literally a competitor. But in our case, let's see that the other way is around, for example, let's say this the printer case here. So ideally, the purchase of a printer doesn't really make a lot of profit for that. But then ideally, when you get into the other products that are related to or associated to the printer that can be bought only for this printer, that makes a lot of business. So this is one of the things that IBM, if you look at it, IBM likes a lot of captive marketing. So the iPhone. So that is where iPhone really leverage their services, iCloud, and all of the other the accessories that they have, which are clearly linked and tied up to iPhone itself, so that the market can be little more than what the other products can achieve. That is related to captive marketing. Let's move on to another one now. Ishaan. Yeah. So what is price skimming? So price skimming is something that skimming itself, is known for like taking the top layer and then gradually reducing it, right? So this is a perfect example for iPhone. I think I'm a big fan of iPhone. So that's why I'm taking this iPhone. And as you all know that iPhone has launched various projects, iPod, iPad, and then iPhone itself. When iPod was released initially, there was no one like a competition to that. So in that it was a monopoly, and then with all of these nice features that it had, so it had a price that was like really high, which was really premium, but it was worth it. The initial adapters know that it was really pricey, but then they really want to take the risk and then buy it. So that is what is eventually the iPod, maybe that was like launched at $400, if I remember. Then eventually they reduced the price to 300 and then to literally to $50. So eventually, as we can read it here, the initial price is really high in such products, in such strategies, and then ultimately they would be lowering the price to fit the market. So let's go look at the other. Yeah, prestige pricing is self-explanatory. It is something that the prices will not, definitely it will not come back, whether it be COVID or whether it be any other situation. Probably the pricing would be equivalently. I mean, they will not reduce the price because there is an impact to the market because of the brand image that they have. So that is something that we see on the screen right now. Let's move on to the other one. So free trial pricing is something that we all know very well because we use YouTube a lot. So that is where it starts with free, and then eventually they will hook you up with some of the other pricing plans based on the features and all of the other things. So this is also self-explanatory. What I'm more interested in the other two pricing strategies, which we'll talk right now. The cost-plus pricing is one of the pricing that is majorly used for the products, like whatever the product that is built on. For example, a product takes X amount to build that product. For example, the material cost or the labor cost or the overhead cost. So combinedly, that is the cost for building a product or manufacturing unit. So the cost plus pricing is mostly based on the unit price rather than the bulk price. So based on that, they are going to add the pricing to benefit uh, the revenue as well. So that is what is cost plus pricing. Let's move on to that one. So value-based pricing is something that I really want to talk about this one. I think most of it's a representative of how much they value what you're selling. So for example, I have the features. Let's take the case of Adobe here. In this case, let's for example sake, let's compare it with Canvas. So as you all know that Canvas is, most of it is free, and then it is, I think the licenses cost is very little, I guess, than compared to Adobe. And no one can beat Canvas in terms of the design software. But in terms of customizing software, no one can beat Adobe. So that is the differentiator, which creates a value for Adobe. We all know that Adobe is little higher on the pricing licenses, but however, the differentiator here is based on the value that the differentiator is creating. So that is where the pricing is more important. The major focus should be on implementing the entire strategy based on one customer segment rather than looking out for multiple segments. So that is the key for this value-based pricing. So these are some of the pricing strategies or tactics that I want to talk about, and handing it to Ishaan for further pricing strategies. Thank you, Ishaan.
Come on mute. Thank you so much, Dilip. Those were some really interesting tactics that you covered for us. What we will next talk about is, what are some of the psychological elements that you need to think of, which can dramatically improve, the price that your customers are willing to pay for you. All right. Okay, so this is something so simple and basic, right? And a lot of this, especially in this section, you will feel is very simplistic, but the effects are that additional 15-20% of that additional effect that your price can have, you can get through these simple psychological tactics. I think this is something that we've all seen, the center stage effect. You make sure you highlight it, you put the best value. So you're letting your customers know, or you're sending that psychological signal that, yes, this is what you should be purchasing, you should be buying. And for you as a business owner, what this will do is, or a product manager, that, hey, probably out of my 3 segments that I have, segment number 2, which is the preferred one, is where I'll probably be having 70% of my users. So you can start catering to those segment a lot more, be it in terms of your feature design, be it in terms of, uh, what you provide for this customer base, all that, and your revenue projections, all of that becomes fine-tuned because you have this something which is easy and preferred for your customers to choose. Then is a decoy pricing. You can, and I think we probably don't see too much of this because it can be um, it doesn't come across in a correct way sometimes, meaning your customers almost can feel cheated. But decoy pricing, is one way of saying, hey, you want to get the subscription, you get $49, but you want to choose certain packs, then it's $49 again. So your customers don't really have a choice, and you're forcing them to pick a particular option. I always feel, it's good to give our customers that choice. There should be some differentiation, not make them forcefully take a decision. But it's still something that a lot of SaaS products have seen use, and I think there is some success that they see around it as well. So feel free to experiment if it's something that works for you. Trial pricing, we all know this. You get a 1-month trial for you to try and really start using the product, get a taste for it, and really get that initial hump over for customers to actually adopt and test out the product. High-low pricing. So you can go ahead and probably give a huge discount, or basically set a premium price and then give a huge discount. It's really common in a lot of segments now, where it's a way, I've seen in the edtech space, companies do this a lot. Udemy does this quite regularly. I see LinkedIn Learning as well doing it. Some segments really use this a lot because the way their users consume is they probably are not buying the entire package itself, but probably buying, individual there's probably many individual repeat purchases through their platform. So really for those, it makes a lot of sense to have these, and it's not just, what we see in brick and mortar stores, but also in SaaS products as well. Bundle pricing, Amazon Prime does this, Microsoft Office 365 does this. Customers get a lot of this, amazing, cool set of features, but you don't exactly know what you're paying for, and your consumption of all of them may not be the same. What you're probably looking at is 1 or 2 applications, or 1 or 2 parts of that bundle, but you end up getting a lot more for free, so you still accept it. So it's a really interesting way. If your product does quite a lot of things, it has several key subset of features, then it's a really cool way to bundle them and price them. Price anchoring, another similar to the first option that we showed. You make sure that this pricing option is really visible, it's really clear. It's make it very obvious for customers that this is the preferred option, and they get anchored to that particular price. So this is another really good option to use as well. Charm pricing, the pricing ending with 9999 or 0.999. And you can have different versions of this. Like, you can actually test out and see, hey, if I price it at $200, am I going to see an uptick or a downtick if I reduce it to $199? Do actually customers will use it? My customer base, will they use it? And traditionally, we've seen this happen everywhere, that there is some sort of uptick happens when you use this kind of pricing. In the end, some of the concepts that we covered were, how do you arrive at that particular value, right? And how do you position it to your customers itself? But once you do that, like I said, your price updation, that something that I mentioned earlier, is you need to continuously relook your pricing strategy, see if you can have any different tactics that you can use. Pricing strategy or pricing model is not something suggested to change a lot. It's really not very easy to change a lot, especially if you have your customers who have purchase plans for a year, who have a commitment for a year or 2 years, right? It can get a little challenging to change it in those cases, but it's something to always look at. And especially in these inflationary scenarios, having a look at your pricing strategy and knowing, can or should I increase my price, is something very important. And there are different things we think of: acquiring more customers, converting from a low tier to a higher tier. But the easiest thing among all of them to do is just increasing the price, right? But we think through it a lot as product managers, because we probably haven't tested how much of an effect this is going to have. So yes, testing is a very important part when you're trying to increase the price, but it is something that we should try, because companies are constantly underestimating willingness to pay of customers. And this is global. This is a trend that's seen across. So testing it out, like, for example, when you can, customers who have increased their price, you can very clearly see, the growth that they're having. Both in terms of revenue, and which will eventually lead to profits as well. So companies that raise the prices, they end up having a faster growth in general than companies that don't raise the prices. In fact, you see that at times the growth reduces for them and may not even increase. So what you see over here are, companies that are B2C companies, which are trying to increase prices, and the year-on-year growth in revenue that they're seeing, similar numbers in both B2C and B2B product. What is interesting is pricing increase has more impact on revenue for B2C products than B2B products. And it's probably because B2B products generally come with, commitments over a long duration of period than B2C products. In the end, as we come towards the end of the session, I would encourage all of you to remember a few important things, like, pricing is equal to value. So if you are confident about the value you're giving to your customers, then price accordingly, choose the right value metric to get that right reward for yourself and your organization for that. Pricing is extremely important. It's pretty complicated as well, but it's also a lot more solvable than people think. Initially, when you start looking at your pricing, it probably seems, hey, there's so many moving parts, so many things to think of, but it's a lot more solvable than people think. And SaaS products give this infinite degree of pricing and packaging freedom. Some of them which we saw today, there are more which are getting evolved, more pricing strategies that come out. And in the end, it's about fairness, right? It's about making sure that we give a certain value to our customers and charging fairly. I think that helps maintain that strong relation between customers and business owners. So having that healthy ratio is always good in a long term. And best part to pricing excellence is just repeated testing. Just keep testing out different strategies, different ways of doing things. And B2B buyers these days are bringing B2C expectations, because in the end, a buyer persona is in the end has the same psyche, the same mentality as when you're buying, a phone for yourself or you're purchasing an office application. So make it easy for consumers to buy. In fact, pricing, ease of purchase, where pricing really is an important part, is a very key driver for improving NPS for customers. So keep it easy for customers to understand what they're paying for and to make the purchase as well. With that, Sandeep, we've come to the end of the session that Dilip and myself had planned. Thank you so much for the audience to be joining in today.
Thank you,
And
Sandeep.
if there are any
Wow.
questions, we can probably open up for that as well.
Sure. Well, that was very informative, I would say. I mean, like the idea of how you took us through the journey of of the entire pricing model and pricing strategies and pricing um, different aspects about pricing as such. So you showed, you mentioned about price is equal to value, and you mentioned about that. I just remembered reading a quote from none other than Warren Buffett. He said, and I quote, "Price is what you pay, value is what you get." And in a way, I feel value is probably more expensive than price. I can probably some of the example would be like for a new product or a business. I believe companies would first want their prospects and customers to realize the value of their product, and then only take up the just indulge in the pricing. Recently, for example, I just visited the Nexa showroom of Maruti Suzuki, where they had a launch of the new SUV. The price is yet to be out in the market, but the car is out. They invited people, they wanted people to experience the car and uh, just look at the features, learn about it, and probably based on the interest is when they usually get the prices out sometime next month, hopefully. You also showed about example of different pricing strategies and tactics, Ishaan and Dilip. I really like that as well. And I like the effect of human psychology, how what the role it plays, and things like that. One question probably I had, which you probably answered towards the end of your presentation, is like usually we are in India, of course, we see very often prices of vegetables varying. Today it is 60 rupees a kilo, and then the next day or probably in the next month it would be like 3 rupees or 10 rupees a kilo. Uh, for SaaS products, how often should prices be changed? I guess you answered a little bit towards the end of your presentation, so I would probably not spend too much of time on that right away. But what about inflation? How to factor inflation when you are deciding on the price for the product?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Sandeep, and it's very relevant for the times we are in where inflation is rife, right? One thing I've noticed is SaaS products are generally pretty high on their margins, right? So we have more of a cushion with SaaS products than other products in general into how much of inflationary situations we can actually absorb. And also, when you look at it, your costs, which could be employee costs, which could be your infrastructure costs, are probably the main things. We don't generally have a lot of raw materials, which can, be very reflective of inflationary, price increases. So generally, what I've seen is we probably don't have as much of a challenge with SaaS products, but when you have a high inflationary scenario like how we're having, it is definitely something very important to think of. And one thing, like I said, is continuous assessment, right? it's something that we always need to keep looking at our pricing strategy, pricing model, and understand, hey, is this something which is relevant? Do we need to increase that price, or do we need to change how we are billing our customers? That's something, that's the first thing, that that continuous actually looking into your pricing and looking into how it's affecting your revenue projections and your profit projections, because your top line may continue to increase, but your bottom line may not really increase as fast as it should. So keeping that in mind, so that you can draw or keep them in tandem, that's one thing to do. Second thing is making it automatic, like having, when you're negotiating a deal with your customers, and especially for sales led deals, you can actually have this baked in, where you have annual inflation based increase baked into the contract itself. That's one of the ways of doing it. The other thing is having some sort of surcharge, like there are a few SaaS products like Uber, for example, does that, right? You have surcharge, which could be a temporary surcharge based on the time of the day, or a temporary fuel based surcharge. Having something like that is another thing. You can think of what it is, how it can be reflected to your domain, but having a surcharge, and clearly communicating about it to your customers about why you're having it and what it means, that should be something which is done as well. And link your pricing to an inflation adjusted metric, right? When we spoke about usage based pricing, we looked at usage as the value metric, but can you have a metric in your pricing model which takes into something which is inflation adjusted? For example, if your customers earn X amount of revenue, your pricing can be calculated based on that, because their revenue is probably inflation adjusted as well. So it gets baked into your pricing strategy as well. These are some of things that I can think of which will help deal with inflationary scenarios. These are definitely trickier, but these are a few things that I can think of.
Very well. I mean, I think communication, as you said, probably is the key there.
Yeah.
I think I don't have any further questions or comments here at this point, but it was really nice to have you both and talk about the pricing, which is such an important thing. I'd probably like to end up, with saying that, of course, price is equally important for a product, and it needs to be something like motivating factor for the customers, so that they can make the decision to eventually buy the product. In fact. That's probably my closing comments for this session as such. Thank you very much, Ishaan and Dilip, for your time today, and hope to have you, very often in our Buddy Talk series as well.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. Pleasure being here.
Thank you all for watching this episode of Buddy Talk. You can, of course, follow me, Sandeep Manipali Gururaj, on LinkedIn. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Thoughtful Buddy, for more such content in the future. Thank you and have a very, very nice day.
See you, everyone.